We back, mic'd up, team recap. We talking about the boys with my boy Mike Prevo. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Mike. We just got done with the Redskins video where we were being kind of pessimistic, but I think the Cowboys were going to have a better tone with them. I really do. So
Absolutely.
to hop right in, let's get to really what I think might have been the best draft class in the league, to be honest, the Cowboys draft class. Started off taking C.D. Lamb day one, obviously, and then they followed up on day two with Trevon Diggs and Neville Gallimore. Mike, what were your thoughts on their early picks?
Value. I think they took debatably the best player on the board at each pick, and especially in day two, it was a position of need. Even with C.D. Lamb, I wouldn't say it was obviously the biggest primary need for the team, but to be able to create that extra weapon for Dak Prescott, I think is astronomical. And the talent they got with C.D. Lamb in pick 17, it's not a prime pick, it's not top 10, and they got a top 10 player.
Easily, easily. And then you look at day two, Trevon Diggs. Personally, I had him graded as an early second round pick. A lot of people had him as a mid to late first round pick, and you get him at pick 51. That's an absolute steal. And the same could be said with Gallimore. A lot of people, I even saw him slipping in the end of the first round. I think a lot of people had him in that second round, though. You get him midway through the third. That's great value. And then after that, were there any day three kind of gems that stood out to you, or no?
Yeah, I think there's two, Tyler Biadasz and Bradley and I think, again, great value. I think both of them also, I think, fill a position of need for the Cowboys. I think they obviously have DeMarcus Lawrence, but on that other side, just switching in players, bodies, and I think Anai could be another body there. And then, obviously, Travis Frederick retiring this year, I think I'm not saying Tyler Biadasz can step in that role, but at least gives competition with Looney and gives that kind of that dynamic competition and maybe position of need. Probably one of the bigger holes, which is truly really not a hole for the team.
No, I completely agree. I mean, if you really think about it, back in December, November, Tyler Biadasz was potentially a top 60, top 70 prospect. And then right up until really the draft day, on IE, people had him going in the late second, early third round. And you're able to get those guys in the fourth and the fifth. I'm not super familiar with Reggie Robinson or Ben DiNucci, but that's some great value, man, just across every single one of their picks. So I really just want to give props to Jerry and his staff because I feel like this year, man, I think they knocked it out of the park. In terms of their offensive depth chart, then, talk about knocking it out of the park, Mike. What about this excites you?
You really can't find a hole. It's hard. It's actually impressive looking at this. And not only do they not have a hole, but it's full of Pro Bowl to all pro potential players. I think it's a beauty. It's a sight for sore eyes. And being a Lions fan, you don't see things like this very often.
No, you really don't. And the thing that's so magical about this is that almost all of these guys are on the precipice or in their prime. Like Dak, Zeke, Amari, CD, Gallup. These are all guys who are young. And then even on their offensive line, Connor Williams, Zach Martin, Lyle Collins. These are players who are still getting better. I know Tyron Smith, a lot of people think with his injuries and stuff, he might be regressing a little bit. But those are some really, really talented guys, really across the board. I mean, to me, the only spot that I'm kind of questioning a little bit is Blake Jarwin at tight end, but they just signed him to a 4-year, $22 million deal. So they obviously believe in him. I think you could kind of bring in maybe a veteran guy there like a Jordan Reed or Delaney Walker if you want to kind of improve that room a little bit. But other than that, like I think this is the best offense in the league from top to bottom.
Absolutely. It's hard to argue against.
I mean, like Michael Gallup last year, he had 1,100 yards. Amari Cooper, we know what he can do. C.D. Lamb, turn on any college tape, and then Ezekiel Elliott's an undebatably a top 5 running back in the league. I think that really, regardless of who that quarterback is, I think anybody could succeed in this situation. So that bears my next question, Mike. What's up with Dak and this franchise tag? Do you think that at this point they even need to sign Dak long term, or do you think that he is kind of the one who stirs this pot?
I think the franchise tag makes sense this year. I think it just financially, not locking up big money with Dak Prescott because they have a lot of players that are going to need to get paid, and that have been paid. I think this is a situation where the weapons make the quarterback, not vice versa. Um, I think Dak Prescott's a good quarterback, above average quarterback. He's not the $30 million a year quarterback he wants to be, and especially when you're working with talent like this. I think that's why it'd be interesting to see an interesting signing people didn't really like. I think it's interesting, to say the least, is Andy Dalton. Could Andy Dalton win games with this team? I think absolutely. I think this is a better position than I think Nick Foles was put in when he won the Super Bowl with the Eagles. So I think Andy Dalton's a capable veteran that could come in this team a lot cheaper and still be
Produce,
be a
still
force to
produce.
reckon with in that. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, what did they sign Dalton for? It was $7 million a year, right?
something
Seven.
like that.
Yeah. And you look at the success that he had with marginal weapons in Cincinnati. I know everybody wants to say, like, oh, he's never won a playoff game and all that stuff, but he's made it to the playoffs multiple times on a roster that has like 10 times less talent than this one. I just think that he would be, and I don't obviously think that, I don't think that Andy Dalton's better than Dak, but I do think that if, God forbid, Dak does get hurt or something, I do think that Andy Dalton has the potential to step in and really lead this team, kind of like you said, Nick Foles did with the Eagles. So it'll really be an interesting situation to watch. And if that does happen, I wonder then, would they be less inclined to pay Dak? Because at that point, if you're seeing below average quarterbacks step in, do you even need to pay 40, 30 to apparently Dak wants 40 million for your quarterback position? I personally don't think they do. From there, we're going to hop into the defensive depth chart. I think there are some more questionables kind of on the defensive side of the ball, but there's still a lot of promise. So, Mike, what do you think is promising looking at their starting defense right now?
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny as we're going from the Redskins, we're going right here. This is also a top tier defensive line, front four, front seven. For them, it's front seven. That linebacking core is talented to say the least. I think their free agent signings on this side of the ball are probably some of my favorite. Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe, to get those kind of players. Obviously, they're a little up there in age, but both still capable. And then you give both those players different dynamics. One being more of a space eater in Poe, and then McCoy, the pass rushing interior defensive lineman. I think that combo is it's. I'm excited to see it, and then pair that with DeMarcus Lawrence and the plethora of questionable pass rushers on the other end. I think they have athletes on the other end. It's basically what it is. Then to have Van Der Esch and Smith just running behind that havoc cost there, it's going to be fun to watch.
It's going to be really fun to watch. And I mean, you were talking about the plethora of pass rushers they have. So it's Tyrone Crawford, they have Dorrance Armstrong, Alden Smith. Now they have Bradley Anae. I mean, those are just guys that you can cycle in and out and really, really tire out opposing tackles. And maybe none of those guys individually will be double-digit sack guys, but I really do think that they can wreak some havoc on their, like, when they're in the game on their own, for sure. And then obviously linebacking core, that's special. That is so special. And the thing that's really special is that Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith are not even in their prime yet, I don't think. So they're gonna grow so much and continue to grow. And those are two, in my opinion, future All-Pro talents. If they're not getting there already. The only thing that I really think they do need to shore up kind of is that secondary, and obviously they're taking the steps to do that. They recently drafted Chidobe Awuzie. Now they drafted Trevon Diggs. I know corner is probably the toughest position to translate from college to the NFL, so maybe there's some worries there. But they do have that dynamic pass rush helping them out. So I don't know, man. I think that you can kind of stomach losing Byron Jones when you have the rest of these pieces on your team. I don't think that this defense is going to be as bad as they were last season, and I really do think that the Cowboys can do some damage in the NFC East.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. And something on the secondary, as most teams are doing, their primary running a nickel package there. So they have a Jordan Lewis at second to third round a couple years ago. So I think that should help a little bit too. And I think again, they have good athletes on the back end. They don't need to cover long with that front four you're putting out there. So I think it is a question. It is not a concern. When there's this much talent on a team, it's hard to find a real hole. They're really not holes, especially after going over the Redskins. But it is something they can obviously improve on.
No, for sure. It's definitely not a whole. It's just it is the weakest unit of them all. And one guy that I did forget about, you mentioned Jordan Lewis, is Anthony Brown. That's another guy who can play the nickel. He can kind of play the outside a little bit. And I probably should have added him on the depth chart because he's definitely a solid corner there. So other than that, you ready to hop into the schedule?
Let's get it.
So, Mike, what are kind of one or two? I know there's a lot of really good games. So, what do you think are one or two that really intrigue you for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think first one being early in the season at Seattle. I think that's a big game. I'd be interested to see how this team performs on the road, and that's a tough road game to say the least. I think they're the better team, they're the more talented team, but having some of that pressure, it's good. It's going to be. I guess it's not a primetime game. It should be a primetime game. I'd be interested to see how they perform there. And I think the second one for me, um, I guess there's two of them. I think both of them kind of answer the same thing: is how does that defense perform against the running attack or just the offense in general? So I think the Ravens is going to be a fun game. How can they stop Lamar Jackson? What's the answer for them, for him and that plethora of backs now, including J.K. Dobbins? I think that's going to be a great game to watch. I think it'll speak a lot to see if that defense can hold up because I don't think the offense is really a question there.
I completely agree. I just think that this team they are going to be tested. They're going to be tested early. You said the Seahawks game. I definitely agree with that. I actually think those first four games in general, I think you're going to see the Browns, who have obviously they've definitely improved from last year. I think the Falcons they still have a lot of guys from that Super Bowl team. They're kind of a sneaky team, and the Rams they're super talented. I really think that by kind of week 4, week 5, that we should have a good idea of as to whether the Cowboys are going to be contenders or pretenders in this division. But I don't even know about projecting wins, Mike, because if you really look at that second half of the schedule, it gets kind of rough. You're talking Steelers, Vikings, Ravens, 49ers, Eagles. Those are all playoff teams last year. The only luxury they have is that the other teams in their division have that same schedule. So the Eagles are going to have to play those same teams. How many of those those games in the second half of the schedule, how many of those do you think are really winnable for the Cowboys? Or do you think they all are at this point?
I think they're all winnable. I think they're all going to be good games. I think they're going to be close. It might come down to a field goal for a lot of them. I think it's good. I think there's a lot. It's a rough end of the schedule, but also if they can come through with it and make it to playoffs, either win the division or buy or as a wild card team, I think that they've been battle tested. I think kind of a weird way to put it, but they'll play some games late in the season that matter, and I think that's something that might help this team coming into the playoffs.
No, I completely agree because I mean, you look at their games they played late in the year this year. There were a lot of sloppy performances. That game against the Eagles that was basically for the division. That was some of the sloppiest football I've seen. And I don't think that you're going to be fighting for a playoff spot if you're playing that type of sloppy football against the Ravens, Steelers, Vikings, those kind of teams. So I think it will be really intriguing to see that offense go against some of the top tier defenses throughout the second half of the year. But other than that, I think that about wraps it up. If you guys are watching this, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and if you have any questions, just put them in the comments. We'll answer all comments, any tweets, anything you guys got for us. So other than that, Mike, do you have anything to add?
I got nothing. We mic'd up. Now we mic out. Doses.
Deuces.